Ladies and gentlemen, let us begin by reflecting on the mind itself, the most exquisite instrument in existence. The mind is like a mirror. It reflects what is before it, yet it is not bound by what it reflects. However, we have made the mistake of believing that we are the images in the mirror rather than the mirror itself. We have confused the self with its thoughts, possessions, and desires. Control your mind, not as one wrestles with a wild beast, but as one tends to a garden. The more you fight, the more entangled you become. True control is a paradox. It arises when you allow the mind to be free, yet gently guided with awareness. Let go of attachment, for it is the weight that anchors us to suffering. Attachment is not love, it is the fear of losing what you think completes you. Real freedom is found not in clinging, but in releasing. To let go does not mean to abandon, it means to hold lightly, to appreciate without grasping. And what is enlightenment? It is not something to be attained, for it is already within you. Enlightenment is the realization that the very search for it has been the barrier all along. You are not a seeker standing outside the door, you are the door itself, open and infinite. Life flows like a river, and you are both the current and the observer. By controlling the mind, you do not stop the river, but learn to navigate its course. By letting go of attachment, you are no longer dragged by the currents of craving and aversion. And in enlightenment, you realize you were never separate from the river. To begin with, the mind is a tool of remarkable complexity, a vast network of thoughts, emotions, and memories. It is the lens through which we perceive the world and the canvas upon which all experiences are painted. But in our fascination with its power, we often mistake the tool for the craftsman. We treat the mind as though it were the master of our existence, rather than an instrument to be observed and guided. The mind's nature is dual. It can be our greatest ally, our most formidable obstacle. Left unchecked, it wanders like a restless animal, darting from one thought to another, driven by impulses and desires. It constructs narratives, projects fears, and fabricates identities, weaving a web that can entangle us in confusion. Yet the mind is not inherently flawed. Its restlessness stems from our failure to understand it. Imagine a clear, still pond. When undisturbed, it reflects the world with perfect clarity. But when agitated, the surface ripples, and the reflections become distorted. The mind, too, reflects reality, yet its natural clarity is often obscured by our endless internal chatter. Thoughts arise unbidden, emotions surge without warning, and we become lost in the turbulence. This is the paradox of the mind. It is both the source of our struggles and the gateway to freedom. When we identify with its fluctuations, we are dragged into the drama of existence, reacting to every ripple and wave. But the mind itself is not the problem. It is our attachment to its movements, our belief that we are the thoughts it produces. The mind craves certainty, clings to the known, and resists the unknown. It is drawn to patterns and thrives on repetition, seeking to categorize and control the vastness of experience. Yet in its quest for order, it often rejects the mystery and spontaneity of life. It wants to hold on to pleasure, avoid pain, and define the indefinable. This is not the fault of the mind, but its design, and therein lies its beauty and challenge. Understanding the mind requires neither condemnation nor indulgence, but observation. It is like watching the clouds drift across the sky, acknowledging their presence without chasing them or trying to hold them still. The mind is not your enemy. It is a reflection of the universe, constantly changing, ever alive. The problem arises when we grasp at the clouds, forgetting that behind them lies the vast, unchanging sky dot. From the moment we first become aware of ourselves, we begin to construct an idea of who we are. We gather fragments of experiences, roles, and relationships, weaving them into a narrative we call I. This story becomes the foundation of our identity, the lens through which we view the world, and the anchor for all our aspirations, fears, and judgments. But this identity, so carefully crafted and fiercely defended, is an illusion, a mirage that shifts and dissolves when examined closely. At its core, the illusion of identity arises from our habit of attaching ourselves to fleeting phenomena. We say, "I am my thoughts," as if the ever-changing stream of ideas in our minds could define something permanent. Yet thoughts are like passing clouds, appearing and disappearing without substance. We say, "I am my body," but the body is in a state of constant flux, every cell renewing itself, every breath altering its composition. Even the emotions we claim as ours are transient waves, rising and falling without permanence. We also identify with roles and relationships. I am a parent, a friend, a professional. These roles may bring meaning and connection, but they are masks we wear in the theater of life, not the essence of who we are. They shift with circumstances, and when they fade, we often feel lost, as if a part of ourselves has vanished. Yet how can something that disappears be the truth of our being? The illusion becomes even more intricate when we attach ourselves to possessions, achievements, and external validation. We say, "I am successful," "I am wealthy," or "I am admired," believing these labels to be the pillars of our worth. But success can fade, wealth can diminish, and admiration can turn to indifference. When these external markers are stripped away, what remains? This is the question that terrifies us, for it threatens the very foundation of our constructed self. The illusion of identity is further reinforced by the mind's tendency to divide the world into self and other, creating a sense of separateness that fuels both fear and desire. We cling to the idea of being a distinct individual, isolated from the vast interconnected web of existence. Yet this separation is an illusion. The boundaries we perceive are creations of the mind, not reflections of reality. Our attachment to this illusory identity is the root of much suffering. When we believe we are our thoughts, we are tormented by their fluctuations. When we define ourselves by external factors, we are at the mercy of change. And when we cling to the idea of being separate, we are plagued by loneliness and the fear of impermanence. To see through the illusion of identity is not to erase the self, but to recognize it for what it is: a temporary, functional construct, useful for navigating the world, but not the ultimate truth of our being. It is to realize that beneath the shifting layers of thoughts, roles, and attachments lies a deeper reality, a boundless, formless awareness that is not confined by labels or definitions. Control is a concept we hold in high regard. We often believe that to control is to master life, to command our thoughts, emotions, and circumstances. Yet in our pursuit of control, we tend to misunderstand its true nature. We view it as a forceful domination, an effort to bend the world, and even ourselves to our will. But this kind of control is fraught with tension, resistance, and inevitable failure. True control is not about suppression or rigidity. It is a delicate harmony, an understanding of flow, and an alignment with the natural rhythms of existence. To understand true control, let us first observe how we approach the mind. We often think of the mind as a rebellious creature, one that must be tamed with discipline and hard effort. But have you noticed that the harder you try to suppress an unwanted thought, the stronger it becomes? The more you attempt to force stillness upon a restless mind, the more agitated it grows. This is because the mind, like water, resists pressure. Try to grasp it tightly, and it slips through your fingers. Hold it gently, and it settles on its own. True control begins not with force, but with awareness. Imagine sitting by a stream and watching its currents. If you try to dam the flow or divert its path, you create chaos. But if you simply observe the stream, you come to understand its nature, the strength of its current, the rocks it flows around, the places where it slows. With this understanding, you can gently guide its flow, not by resistance, but by working with its inherent tendencies. The same is true of your mind and emotions. True control is not about suppressing anger, fear, or desire. It is about recognizing them as they arise, understanding their roots, and allowing them to pass without becoming entangled. Emotions are like waves. They rise, crest, and eventually fall back into stillness. When you resist them, you create turbulence. When you accept them with clarity and compassion, they lose their grip over you. The pursuit of control often extends beyond the self to the external world. We try to control people, circumstances, and outcomes, believing that if only everything aligns with our expectations, we will find peace. But life is inherently unpredictable. The more rigidly we hold to our desires, the more we suffer when life inevitably diverges from our plans. True control is not about dictating the course of events, but about adapting to them with grace. It is the ability to respond, not react, to life's changes. Consider the way a skilled sailor navigates the sea. They cannot control the wind or the waves, but they can adjust their sails to harness the wind's power and steer the boat with precision. They do not curse the storm or demand calm waters. They work with what is, finding balance amidst uncertainty. This is true control, a mastery born, not of domination, but of understanding and flexibility. True control also requires letting go of the illusion of complete mastery. Paradoxically, the more you relinquish the need to control everything, the more power you gain over your experience. By trusting in the flow of life, you begin to act from a place of wisdom and clarity rather than fear and compulsion. You become like a dancer, moving in harmony with the music of existence, neither leading nor being led, but co-creating in every moment. This control is not achieved through rigid effort, but through a deep trust in yourself and the process of life. It is the kind of control that allows you to face challenges without being overwhelmed, to experience joy without clinging, and to meet loss without despair. It is the quiet strength that arises when you no longer seek to dominate, but instead learn to move with the currents of life, fully present, fully aware. Attachment is a word that often evokes images of love, connection, and security. Yet when we delve deeper, we begin to see that attachment is not the bond of love itself, but the weight we place upon it. It is the clinging, the grasping, and the refusal to let go, even when letting go is what is most needed. Attachment is the root of much of our suffering, for it binds us to things that are transient by their very nature, and in doing so, it blinds us to the freedom and peace that come from living in harmony with impermanence. At its essence, attachment is the mind's attempt to hold on to what it perceives as pleasurable, safe, or desirable. We become attached to people, possessions, ideas, and even identities, believing that they complete us or bring us lasting happiness. Yet life, in its ever-changing flow, does not cater to our attachments. Relationships change, possessions are lost or wear away, ideas evolve, and the identities we so carefully construct crumble in the face of time and experience. The burden of attachment lies not in the objects of our affection, but in the clinging itself. Imagine holding onto a rope tightly as it is being pulled away. The tighter you grip, the more it burns your hands, yet you cannot bring yourself to let go, fearing the loss of what you hold. This is the essence of attachment. It is not the rope that causes the pain, but our refusal to release it. Consider the ways in which attachment manifests in our lives. We cling to loved ones, expecting them to fulfill our needs and to remain unchanged. We cling to material possessions, associating them with our worth and identity. We cling to our ambitions, believing that our value depends on what we achieve. And perhaps most insidiously, we cling to our beliefs and ideas, often resisting the truths that challenge them. This clinging creates an immense weight that we carry with us. When we attach ourselves to the outcome of our efforts, we live in constant anxiety, fearing failure or disappointment. When we attach ourselves to people, we place the unbearable expectation on them to remain as we want them to be, rather than allowing them the freedom to grow and change. And when we attach ourselves to our identity, we live in fear of anything that threatens to shatter the image we have created. Attachment also distorts our ability to truly experience and appreciate life. When we cling to a flower, plucking it from the ground to possess it, we kill the very beauty that drew us to it. When we cling to moments of happiness, we fail to enjoy them fully, because we are already dreading their end. Attachment blinds us to the reality that beauty, joy, and love are not diminished by their transience, they are made precious by it. To let go of attachment is not to renounce the world or withdraw from life's joys and relationships. It is to hold the things we cherish with an open hand rather than a closed fist. Letting go does not mean abandoning, it means loving without clinging, enjoying without craving, and appreciating without the need to possess. It means recognizing that all things, even the most precious, are impermanent, and finding peace in that truth. Letting go of attachment requires a shift in perspective. Instead of seeing the world as a collection of things to be owned or controlled, we begin to see it as a flow to be experienced. Instead of demanding permanence in a world that is ever-changing, we learn to dance with its rhythms. This does not diminish love or joy, in fact, it deepens them. To love someone while knowing they are free to come and go is to love without conditions. To enjoy a moment while knowing it will pass is to savor it fully. The burden of attachment is not inevitable. It is a choice, one born of misunderstanding. When we see that attachment is not the source of our joy, but the thief of it, we begin to let go. And in that letting go, we discover a profound freedom, a lightness of being, and an ability to move through life with grace and peace. Love is perhaps the most profound and universal of human experiences, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. We speak of love in grand terms, writing songs, poetry, and stories about its power to transform, to heal, to uplift. But so often what we call love is entangled with expectations, possessiveness, and conditions. It becomes less about the other person and more about what they can provide for us, a sense of worth, security, or fulfillment. In this misunderstanding, we lose sight of the true essence of love, reducing it to a transaction or an attachment, rather than allowing it to be the boundless, liberating force that it is. One of the most common misunderstandings of love is the idea that it is something to be obtained or possessed. We often believe that love comes from outside of us, that it is something others give to us, or something we must earn. This belief leads us to chase after love, seeking it in relationships, in admiration, or in the approval of others. But this pursuit is fraught with anxiety, for if love is something external, it can also be taken away. This fear of losing love creates a dependency, a clinging that stifles the very freedom and openness upon which love thrives. We also misunderstand love when we confuse it with attachment. To attach is to hold on, to grasp tightly to someone or something, fearing its loss. Attachment often disguises itself as love, but its nature is fundamentally different. While love is expansive and liberating, attachment is confining and driven by need. When we are attached, we do not love the person as they are, we love them as they fulfill our desires or fit into our idea of who they should be. This conditional love is fragile, prone to suffering, because it is built on the shifting sands of expectations rather than the solid ground of acceptance. The misunderstanding of love also extends to the belief that it must always be pleasant or easy. We often think that love is incompatible with conflict, discomfort, or difficulty, and when these arise, we question whether the love is real. But love, in its truest form, does not shy away from the complexities of life. It embraces imperfection, both in the other and in oneself. Love does not demand perpetual harmony. It grows through the willingness to navigate challenges together, to see and accept each other fully, even in moments of vulnerability or discord. Perhaps one of the most pervasive misunderstandings of love is the idea that it is limited, that it can be exhausted or divided. We fear that loving one person means there will be less love for another, or that giving love will leave us depleted. But love is not a finite resource. It is more like a flame, capable of igniting countless others without diminishing its own light. When we understand this, we begin to see that love does not diminish. Through giving, it expands. In misunderstanding love, we also place undue emphasis on its object. We convince ourselves that love is about finding the right person, the soulmate, the perfect partner who will make us whole. But this search for perfection often blinds us to the deeper truth that love is not about the other's qualities, but about the quality of our attention, presence, and openness. Love is not something we find, it is something we bring. It is a state of being, a way of seeing that arises when we let go of judgment and open our hearts fully to what is. Love, when misunderstood, becomes a source of pain, disappointment, and disillusionment. But these experiences are not the fault of love itself. They arise from our misconceptions about what love should be, what it should give us, and what it should look like. When we impose these expectations, we limit love, constraining it within the bounds of our fears and desires, rather than allowing it to unfold in its natural, boundless form. The flow of life is impartial. It does not favor or discriminate. It carries all things, joy and sorrow, triumph and failure, love and loss, with the same quiet persistence. When we embrace this truth, we begin to see that life is not something to be controlled or conquered, but something to be experienced. Each moment, whether we perceive it as good or bad, is part of a larger whole, a continuous movement that is far greater than any one fragment. To understand the flow of life, one must first recognize its impermanence. Nothing in life is fixed or static. Everything is in a state of becoming. The seasons change, the tides rise and fall, and even the stars, seemingly eternal, are born and die in the vast expanse of time. This impermanence is not a flaw, but the very nature of existence. Yet it is this impermanence that we often resist, seeking to hold on to what we cherish and avoid what we fear. In our resistance, we create tension and suffering. We cling to relationships, possessions, and identities, hoping to make them permanent, even as they inevitably evolve. We fight against change, longing for the comfort of the familiar, and in doing so, we miss the beauty of what is unfolding before us. The river does not stop flowing because we wish it to. It continues on its way, carrying us with it whether we go willingly or not. When we begin to move with the flow of life rather than against it, we discover a profound sense of freedom. To move with the flow does not mean to be passive or resigned. It means to be present, to respond to each moment as it arises without clinging to the past or grasping at the future. It means trusting in the intelligence of the river, knowing that it will carry us where we need to go, even if the path is not always clear. The flow of life is not linear, it is cyclical and unpredictable. There are times when the river rushes forward with great force, sweeping us into new experiences and challenges. There are other times when it slows to a gentle trickle, offering moments of stillness and reflection. Both are essential, for the ebb and flow of life mirror the rhythms of the universe itself. The tides do not resent their retreat, nor do the seasons resist their turning. They move in harmony with the flow, knowing that each phase has its purpose. To align with the flow of life is to let go of the need to control every outcome. It is to release the tight grip of expectations and allow life to unfold in its own time and manner. This does not mean abandoning effort or intention, but recognizing that our actions are part of a larger process, one that we cannot fully predict or dictate. It is like planting a seed. We can nurture it with care, but we cannot force it to grow. Growth happens in its own time, in harmony with the cycles of nature. The flow of life also invites us to embrace uncertainty. The river's course is not always predictable. It twists and turns, sometimes plunging into rapids, other times opening into calm expanses. We cannot see around every bend, and this can be unsettling. Yet it is in this uncertainty that the mystery and wonder of life reside. When we let go of the need to know exactly where we are going, we become open to the unexpected gifts and lessons that the river has to offer. In the flow of life, everything is interconnected. The river is not separate from its surroundings. It is shaped by the earth it passes through, the rain that feeds it, and the ocean it eventually joins. In the same way, our lives are intertwined with the lives of others in the world around us. To move with the flow is to recognize this interconnectedness, to see that we are not isolated individuals, but part of a greater whole. This awareness allows us to act not from selfish desire, but from a place of compassion and understanding, in harmony with the flow of life itself.